You probably heard of Rolex. Maybe you've even dreamed of wearing one. But did you know the man behind it and how he nearly lost everything just trying to put a crown on your wrist? This isn't just a story of a luxury watch. It's a story of obsession, survival, marketing, and even trickery. And what if I told you the most desired watch on earth isn't even the most accurate, isn't the rarest, and isn't even actually totally handmade by anyone? What if the name Rolex, this golden standard of luxury, is less about horology or making timepieces, and more about a masterclass in manipulation? Today, we are digging into the untold history of how the man who created the Rolex, through myth-making, psychological genius, and ruthless control, tricked the entire world into paying thousands for a watch most of us don't even need. And trust me, this deception runs deeper than time itself. It was 1905 in London, England, where there were damp, cobblestone streets and horse-drawn carriages clattering by. A 24-year-old German immigrant named Hans Wilsdorf paces inside a modest office, clutching a ticking pocket watch. It's not the watch itself he's obsessed with. It's what he thinks it could become. At this time, wristwatches were considered delicate, even feminine. Men carried pocket watches. Wristwatches were for women, and they were notoriously unreliable. But Wilsdorf saw something no one else did. A future where a timepiece wasn't tucked in your coat pocket. It lived on your wrist, accurate to the second, and tough enough to survive the world. Wilsdorf co-founded a small watch distribution company called Wilsdorf and Davis with his brother-in-law Alfred Davis. But Hans had bigger dreams. In 1908, the company was officially renamed Rolex. Hans wanted to use a name that was short, sharp, easy to say in any language, and would look elegant on a watch face. He said it came to him while riding in a horse carriage across London. But other reports say Wilsdorf simply came up with a name from a noise the watch made when winding. But World War I broke out in 1914 and anti-German sentiment was everywhere in England. Despite living and working in London, Wilsdorf, a German national, was now seen as the enemy. Orders dried up. People were suspicious. Hans made a bold move. He relocated the company to Geneva, Switzerland in 1919, a country known for neutrality and for precision watchmaking. In 1920, Hans Wilsdorf registered Monter's Rolex SA in Geneva as the new company name, and then later it became Rolex SA. First, there was doubt. The idea of a reliable wristwatch was mocked. Watchmakers, critics, and even investors saw Hans as a fantasist. While wristwatches existed before Rolex, they were not considered very reliable timekeepers, particularly compared to pocket watches. Wilsdorf set out to change that. He understood that in order for wristwatches to gain mass appeal, they needed to be just as precise and durable as pocket watches. He had created watches years prior, but in order to become the company and brand that Rolex is known for today, Wilsdorf had to come up with something else besides just making watches. So here is where the duping begins. The play on just how materialistic people can become if you just give them a nudge. Let's now break down 10 of the main ways how Rolex tricked us, one brilliant, manipulative step at a time. 1. Precision hype. Rolex was the first wristwatch brand to receive the Swiss Certificate of Chronometric Precision in 1910. Yeah, okay, but here's the thing. Many other watches could have qualified. Rolex just marketed harder. They made official certification sound like a divine seal. 2. The first waterproof case, sort of. In 1926, Rolex released the Oyster, a waterproof case. To promote it, Wilsdorf had a young English swimmer, Mercedes Gleitze, swim the English Channel wearing the Rolex Oyster. Did the watch keep perfect time? Not really, but the image of water resistance stuck. It was performance theater. 3. The crown logo and symbolism. The signature crown logo was not added to Rolex watches until later in the 1930s. Why crown? Because Wilsdorf wanted Rolex to be synonymous with royalty, even though no king ever endorsed them. It was pure aspirational psychology. The fourth hustle. Celebrity endorsements before influencers were a thing. Rolex gave watches to race car drivers, aviators, divers, and mountaineers, and then told those stories like legends. When Sir Edmund Hillary climbed Everest, Rolex was there even though a Smith's watch did most of the timekeeping. Rolex just stole the narrative. 5. Artificial scarcity. Here's the kicker. Most Rolex watches are not rare, but Rolex limits production on purpose. Why so? To create artificial scarcity. You can't just walk into a store and buy a new Submariner. You have to wait. That wait makes people want it more. 6. A monopoly on the pre-owned market. Rolex controls its brand so tightly that even the second-hand market feels exclusive. Prices go up, not down. It's one of the only consumer products that appreciates with time, not because of materials, but because of perception. 7. Durable but not unique. Sure, Rolex watches are built well, but so are Seiko's. What you're paying for is not just durability, it's status. 8. Military and explorer tie-ins. Rolex supplied watches to the British Royal Navy and other elite forces. They didn't do it to support troops. They did it to make the average consumer feel like a hero when they strap one on. 9. Restricting distribution. Rolex won't let just any store carry its watches. Even authorized dealers are under strict contracts. That kind of elitism sells. 10. Mastering the resale psyche. Rolex watches have become investment vehicles. How come? Because Rolex engineered the illusion that they are. The company never says buy for profit, but the culture they encourage did. So for years, Hans Wilsdorf and his company fooled the public into believing a simple yet well-made watch should be worth huge amounts of money, well into the thousands. But behind the scenes, tragedy would strike. Hans Wilsdorf's beloved wife, Florence, died in 1944. They had no children. He was heartbroken and decided to do something few CEOs ever would. He created the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, a private trust. He made sure Rolex would never be sold, never go public, and that the profits would go back into watchmaking, employee care, and charity. Surprised? Yeah. Understand that Rolex is not a regular company, but a charity. That foundation is Europe's largest scholarship fund, and not owned by an individual. But after his wife died, Wilsdorf would continue to put Rolexes on the wrists of explorers, pilots, and deep-sea divers and build a facade for Rolex. It was always about more than telling time. It was about what he could achieve. But no matter who you are or how much money you earn, your run always comes to an end. Hans died in 1960. But by then, and even more today, Rolex had become synonymous with prestige. Presidents, scientists, and CEOs, and even rappers in modern times would all eventually wear one. Over the decades, the Rolex lineup evolved. The Datejust, the Daytona, the GMT Master. The Rolex became the ultimate status symbol. Today, Rolex is worth billions, but their average watch costs less than $1,000 to manufacture. Yet, many models retail and resell for 10 times that, not because of gold or jewels, but because we bought into a hyped-up story. A story about excellence, legacy, and status that honestly only existed on paper. Even more ironic, most Rolexes sit in boxes. They're not used for what they were made for. They're worn to networking events and Instagram photos. Wilsdorf wasn't just building watches. He was building myth. The watch isn't ticking for time. It's ticking for ego. And when status becomes a goal, you can be sure fakes follow. The global counterfeit watch industry is estimated at over $1 billion a year. And guess what brand leads a fake pack? Rolex. From street vendors to high-end replicas that can fool jewelers, the Rolex image is so powerful that people will risk jail time just to fake owning one. Some counterfeits are so good, they even use real Rolex parts. They're sold on black markets, gray markets, and sometimes even in legitimate stores. It's a game of illusion. And in this game, everyone gets tricked, even the rich. So, was Rolex really a scam? Or were we just willing participants in one of the most elegant global branding campaigns in history? Well, it is a device for telling the time of day. By the way, even the sun can do that, but is that worth $30,000? A Rolex tells time, but mostly it tells a story. And like most great stories, it only works if you believe it. What you believe? Well, I happen to believe I am out of time. So support the Anything History channel any way you can. and come back for the next one. Thanks.